All right, welcome in everybody. It's time once again for the deep dive, and today we are going to be tackling, well, I don't know if tackling is the right word, but we're going to be diving into the life and work of Bob Camblin.
Right.
A fascinating artist, and as always, you guys are here because you want to learn about this stuff quickly, but you also want to get like a solid handle on it. You don't want just like the surface. You want the good stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's our whole goal here, is to get to that without you having to do a ton of reading.
Right.
We've done it for you or your humble servants here at the Deep Dive.
That's right.
And Bob Camblin, so he's someone, his work has been seen in a lot of places, but, he's not exactly like a household name. He's not like, I don't know, Warhol or Picasso, but his work is really striking. And he's got this kind of enigmatic quality to him
Yeah, I think that's right.
that I think we're going to find is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, just on the surface, he's someone who was really quite prolific, produced a lot of work in a lot of different mediums, so oils, acrylics, watercolors, drawings, prints. We're even talking painted paper.
Okay, wow.
And yet, yeah, it is hard to get a solid handle on his work. I mean, his pieces, they don't pop up for sale that often, but when they do, they command pretty high prices. So there's this kind of tension there, right? Like widely recognized, but also sort of elusive. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think part of what we want to do today is try to like unpack that a little bit. Like, how do you get to that position of, you're not super well known, but people are willing to shell out some serious cash for your stuff.
Exactly.
And thankfully for this deep dive, we've got a lot to work with.
We do.
We've got excerpts from this book, Bob Camblin quotes, and other mysteries.
Oh, nice.
So that's exciting because we get to hear directly from the artist himself.
Yeah, love it.
We've also got the Bob Camblin biography by, I believe it's Lawrence Rowland. And then we've also got, this is a bit of a curveball, but it's really cool. There's a YouTube transcript of this discussion of one of his paintings called Full Moon from this channel called, and I love this name, Incomplete Works.
Oh, that's great.
Which I just thought was brilliant. And so we're going to dive into that painting
Fantastic.
in a little bit more detail and really try to like unpack what they're seeing there.
Cool.
And then lastly, we've got some pasted text that's just like a collection of reviews and forewords of his works, just to give us a sense of how other people have viewed it.
Yeah, get a sense of the critical reception.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of sprinkled throughout all that, we've got some historical information, just like facts and figures, dates and places. And we've even got some quotes and anecdotes from people who knew him.
Oh, wow.
So I think our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to kind of go through all this and try to piece together through all these different voices and perspectives a picture of, his artistic philosophy, how it developed, how it changed over time, and ultimately like what made his work so unique and so compelling.
Yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
Great, let's do it. Let's kick things off with his early life and the things that shaped him.
Okay, sounds good.
So he was born in 1928 in Oklahoma, specifically Ponca City, which at the time was kind of like this, well, it was boomtown because of the whole oil thing.
Wow.
And both of his parents were artists.
Okay, so it's in the blood.
Yeah, it seems that way. And even in high school, he was already showing that creative spark.
How so?
Well, he became the art director for the school yearbook, so he was already thinking about visuals and composition and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But here's something I thought was really interesting. Growing up in Ponca City during the oil boom, there's this huge estate there, the Marland Estate, and also this iconic statue of the pioneer woman.
Right.
And apparently he was really struck by these, I mean, who wouldn't be?
Yeah, the scale of those things.
Yeah, and later on in some of his works, he subtly incorporates this pioneer woman image, but he labels it as VV, which actually stands for Viva Camblin, his mother.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like this personal connection to this larger cultural symbol.
Yeah, that's really neat. It makes you wonder, like, how those early visual experiences, the grandeur of the oil boom, the symbolism of that statue, how that kind of seeped into his work later on,
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be looking for,
Yeah.
right? Like those threads that run through his whole career.
Exactly.
Now, another big influence early on, and this is from the biography, was The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
And this is kind of fascinating because apparently he saw it when he was young and it just like, it blew him away.
Really?
Yeah, he was totally captivated by it.
I mean, I get it. The movie's pretty magical.
Yeah, and it makes you think about how those fantastical elements and that whole journey to the Emerald City, like how that might have sparked his imagination and maybe even led to his later explorations of these sort of like non-literal realities in his art.
Yeah, that's an interesting connection for sure.
And then, of course, we can't forget about the human element, right? Like the people who influence us.
Of course.
And in high school, he met this guy, Forrest Harrisberger, and they became lifelong friends over 6 decades.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and their friendship, at least initially, was based on just like good vibes. They just
All
connected.
right, that initial spark.
Yeah, but then they discovered they both loved to draw, and that really cemented their bond.
That's really cool, finding that shared passion early on.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they even ended up enlisting in the Air Force Reserve together during the Korean War, and even then, they were sketching together on the California coast in their downtime.
Wow, so they really supported each other's creative endeavors, even in like the most unexpected of places?
Exactly, and that's a testament to the power of those early creative partnerships.
Sure.
And it wasn't just visual influences. This guy was a reader.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he loved to read.
Yeah.
And some of his favorite authors and works were Ralph Waldo Emerson,
Okay.
the I Ching, and haiku.
Okay, that's an interesting mix.
Right. And it might seem a bit random, but I think if you look closer, you can see how these might have shaped his artistic thinking.
How so?
Well, think about Emerson, right?
Yeah.
Self-reliance, intuition, those are big themes for him. And you can see how that might have influenced Camblin's independent artistic path and his, let's say, unconventional approach to the whole art game.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the I Ching.
Well, I Ching is all about change and balance and interconnectedness, and those ideas might have found their way into the underlying structures of his work or even like the symbolic language he
Oh,
used.
right. I see that.
And then haiku, with its like brevity and evocative nature, could have influenced his ability to capture complex ideas with just a few visual elements.
Yeah, like distilling things down to their essence.
Exactly. And so you see, even in his reading material, there's this tendency towards like introspection and finding deep meaning in the everyday, the seemingly simple things.
Right. Yeah, it's like he's looking for those hidden depths everywhere.
Absolutely. And then, as with many artists, there's often like a turning point, a transformative experience. And for Camblin, it seems like that was his Fulbright scholarship year in Italy.
Ah, Italy, a classic.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a rite of passage for so many artists. And for him, it was particularly impactful.
In what way?
Well, he was blown away by the grand masters, the classic Italian artists. But what really captured his imagination was Venice.
Venice, beautiful Venice.
Yeah, he called it his real-life Emerald City, Oz. So you can see that connection to his childhood love of The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But he was also deeply moved and kind of haunted by the Uffizi Gallery and the Capuchin Catacombs of Palermo.
Oh, wow. The catacombs, that's pretty intense.
Yeah, those images of mortality and artistic mastery really stayed with him.
I can imagine.
And the catacombs, with all those like preserved bodies, those provided him with these lasting abstract figurative forms that he called mummies.
Mummies, huh?
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about how those mummy forms, like, did they always stay recognizable in his work, or did they become more like internalized abstractions?
Right. Like, did they evolve over time?
Yeah, maybe they became like underlying structures or
Uh-huh.
recurring motifs in his later, more abstract or even figurative pieces.
Yeah, maybe not always explicitly recognizable, but like you can feel their influence in his approach to form, texture, even the themes he explored.
Exactly. It's like these echoes of his early experiences.
That makes sense.
And, we even have some specific examples of how Italian art directly influenced his work.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, for example.
Okay.
That inspired his tribute to KPFT radio here in Houston.
Interesting. What's the connection there?
Well, he saw a parallel between Botticelli's celebration of love and the whole idea of community radio, like KPFT.
Oh, that's cool. So he's finding these like unexpected connections between art history and contemporary life.
Exactly. And then there's Botticelli's Primavera, which informed his painting of Flora, but his version is masked and is full of hidden imagery.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and so these aren't just like casual nods to these classic works. They're like deliberate reinterpretations.
Yeah, it shows he was actively engaging with art history, like having a conversation with it.
Yeah, and finding new meanings for himself and for his audience.
That's really cool.
And speaking of finding new meanings, let's talk about how his artistic philosophy developed and changed over time, starting in the 1950s.
Okay, let's do it.
So in the early part of his career, he was really into social protest themes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and stylistically, he was using heavy outlines and flat colors.
Interesting.
But then he shifts gears, and he starts combining this social realism with non-objectivity.
Okay, now what does that mean?
Well, basically, he was trying to depict the subjective world of human symbols, so like how we create meaning through symbols. And he was inspired by artists like Cremoni and Etruscan terracotta figures.
Right. So he's moving from like the external world and its problems to something more internal, more about like our inner experience.
Exactly, and I think that's a key transition in his artistic development.
Yeah, it's like he's going deeper, exploring new territory.
Absolutely, and then in the 60s, he goes through another interesting phase where drawings become central to his practice.
Drawings.
Yeah, and we're talking monumental in scale and subject matter, like really ambitious stuff.
Wow, that's quite a shift.
And here's the really cool part. He even started incorporating what he called corrections into some of his early masterpieces, like The Descent from the Cross.
Corrections, like what do you mean?
So he would use white gouache and pasted paper to like deliberately create these imperfections in the work.
Huh, that's kind of unusual. Why would he do that?
Well, for him, these corrections were like personal symbols representing things like weaknesses, strengths, fate, and perseverance.
Oh, I see. So they're not really mistakes. They're intentional additions that add another layer of meaning.
Exactly. And I think it speaks to his artistic process. You know, he wasn't afraid of imperfections. He saw them as part of the journey, part of the human experience.
Yeah, it's like he's saying perfection isn't the goal. It's the process, the struggle, the evolution that matters.
I like that's a very like humanizing approach to art.
Yeah, it makes it more relatable, more honest in a way.
Right. And then in the 60s, he's also, he's a restless artist. He's always experimenting, and he sets his sights on this ambitious goal. He wants to combine the poetic suggestions of Hugo van der Goes with the emotional intensity of Goya.
Wow, that's quite a pairing.
Yeah. And to do this, he starts experimenting with applied paper.
A black paper.
Yeah, so like adding paper to the canvas. And the cool thing is that as the paper aged, it would create these subtle beige gradations in his work.
Oh, that's cool. So it adds like another layer of texture and visual interest.
Yeah, and you can really see this in his series of masks where the applied paper is like a key element, and then he emphasizes it with shading and pen strokes.
Okay, so he's really thinking about materials and how they can contribute to the overall effect.
Absolutely. And during this period, he also intentionally muted his color palettes to harmonize with these drawings.
So he's like fine-tuning every aspect of his work, the colors, the materials, the lines. It's all very deliberate.
Yeah, and I think it shows his deep understanding of how all these elements work together to create meaning.
That's fascinating.
And then there's a big move. He relocates to Houston in the late 60s.
Houston, okay.
And part of the reason for this, according to the biography, was that he felt Salt Lake City, where he was living before, had a Philistine view of art.
Ouch. Well, Houston's a bit more of an art hub, right?
Yeah, and so he comes here and he starts teaching at Rice University.
Okay.
But that's not all. He also teams up with these guys, Earl Staley and Joe Tate, and they form B&E Productions.
B&E Productions. What is that?
Well, it's basically this like artistic collective, and they start putting on some pretty unconventional shows. Like one was even called the Tattoo Show.
The Tattoo Show. Wow, that's definitely different.
Yeah, and so you can see like he comes to Houston and there's this like burst of creative energy.
Yeah, it's like a new chapter for him.
And then it gets even more interesting. They develop this concept called the holding firm.
The holding firm. Okay, what's that all about?
So it's basically this idea of like collaborative projects, but they were doing things like unauthorized house renovations.
Unauthorized.
Yeah, like
Like
doing
how?
work on houses without permits, kind of like a, I don't know, an artistic statement in a way.
That's pretty wild.
And they were also creating joint artworks like drawings and paintings together. And they even put on shows like Joe Tate's Backyard and the Camping Show.
Joe Tate's Backyard and the Camping Show, those sound, I don't even know what to imagine with those.
Yeah, they're definitely outside the box. And I think it shows his willingness to experiment, to collaborate, to kind of like poke fun at the art world a little bit.
Yeah, it's like he's not taking it all too seriously. He's having fun with it.
Exactly. And that's refreshing, right?
Definitely.
But he also had his frustrations with the art world, like the whole art game, as he called it,
Yeah.
and the pressure of painting for money.
Yeah, that can be a real struggle for artists, trying to balance creative integrity with commercial success.
And he didn't always succeed. He even refused payment for his work sometimes. And he had some strong opinions about how galleries and museums should curate shows.
Oh, like what?
Well, he thought they should focus on showing an artist's overall environment, like the context of their work, rather than just like isolated pieces.
Right, like show the whole picture, the whole process.
Yeah, and he believed in faith and good work, like those were the stabilizing forces of the art world. And he even had this kind of like perverse logic where he saw obstacles as opportunities.
Okay, how so?
Well, there's this recurring image in his work of jars of water.
Jars of water.
Yeah, and for him, those represented like stumbling blocks becoming stepping stones. So like taking something that's in your way and turning it into something positive.
Wow, that's a really powerful image.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to his resilience and his optimism, even in the face of challenges.
Definitely. He seems like he had a very like can-do attitude.
Oh, yeah, he was definitely a go-getter. And in 1967, he starts this whole new series, the Scarecrow series.
Scarecrows.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they start out pretty straightforward. They're inspired by this book by Gunter Grass called Dog Years, and they represent spring and renewal.
Okay, so like a symbol of hope, new beginnings.
Exactly, but then they evolve. They start incorporating elements like lobster and larva shells, and those hint at metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis. Okay, so things are getting a little more complex.
Yeah, and he even starts describing them as sculptures, almost like disguises.
Disguises. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then, to make things even more interesting, he starts adding text to his paintings during this period.
Text, like words.
Yeah, words, phrases, sometimes they seem like clues, other times they're like deliberate traps that might not even be related to the image.
Traps. Okay, so he's playing with our expectations.
Yeah, he wants to make us think, to engage with the work on a deeper level.
It's like he's challenging us to figure it out.
Exactly. And he even agreed with Tom Wolfe's critique in The Painted Word.
Oh, the book about how words have become too dominant in the art world?
Yeah, that one. And I think Camblin was actively trying to subvert that, to create work that went beyond language.
Right, so he's using words, but also trying to transcend them at the same time.
Exactly. And that's a pretty sophisticated approach, I think.
Definitely.
And his overall goal with all this, with the scarecrows, the text, the whole 9 yards, was to really involve the viewer in the art, almost like solving a puzzle.
Okay, a puzzle. How so?
Well, he talked about data problems in his work, like distinguishing genuine clues from dead ends. And he seemed to really enjoy this guerrilla warfare on our visually saturated, word-dominated culture.
It's like he's trying to shake things up, to make us see the world differently.
Yeah, and he wanted to push out beyond even surrealism. He felt like they hadn't gone far enough in questioning our expectations of reality.
So he's aiming for something even more radical, more mind-bending.
And he wanted to do this through surprise, unexpected juxtapositions, non sequiturs, anything to unlock those subconscious emotions.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Oh, yeah. He even said, and this is a direct quote, "I want to remake Goya in 20th century terms as Cézanne wanted to remake Poussin."
Whoa, that's a bold statement.
Yeah, and I think it tells us a lot about his artistic aspirations. Like he saw himself as part of this lineage of artists who are really trying to reshape how we see the world.
Yeah, he's not content with just following trends. He wants to break new ground.
Exactly, and that's what makes him so fascinating.
Absolutely.
Now, we've already touched on the 1970s a bit with the scarecrows and the whole metamorphosis thing, but this period was really focused on the life cycle, birth, death, and regeneration.
Right, like the big questions, the fundamental human experiences.
Yeah, and he called it his enigmatic search for life's mysteries.
That's a good way to put it.
And he was really probing metamorphosis from an evolutionary perspective,
Huh.
often drawing on thinkers like Freud, de Chirico, and Grunewald for hidden meanings in his work.
So he's looking at it from all these different angles, psychological, artistic, spiritual.
Yeah, and he's using this recurring imagery of puppets, scarecrows, skulls, murky reliquaries. Maybe he was influenced by writers like Kazantzakis and Grass, but despite all these heavy themes, he never lost his sense of humor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he insisted that art wasn't inherently heavy or serious.
That's interesting, that kind of juxtaposition, like tackling these big ideas but with light touch.
Yeah, and I think that's a key part of his appeal. Like, he's inviting us to think deeply, but also to not take ourselves too seriously.
Right, there's a sense of playfulness there, even when he's dealing with weighty subjects.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a specific painting, one that we have a lot of information about. Full moon.
Okay, let's hear about it.
So imagine this, a bright circular full moon right in the center of the canvas. It's got these colored spots on it, yellow, blue, red. And it even has these faint facial features.
Like a face on the moon.
Yeah, like eyes, a nose, maybe a cheek or a mouth. It's a little ambiguous. And then surrounding this moon is this swirling dreamlike landscape made up of colored pencil lines, greens, yellows, orange. It's all very fluid and ethereal.
Wow, that sounds pretty trippy.
And then framing this whole lunar scene on either side are these tall wooden posts that are banded in the middle, and they form this kind of like makeshift fence.
Okay, so like a boundary around the moon?
Yeah, but the cool thing is that the tops of these posts are glowing, and there are arcs of light emanating from them.
Oh, that's cool. So it's not just a simple fence, it's like energized or something.
Yeah, and here's the really interesting part. The three posts on each side, if you look closely, they spell out Bo BB.
No way. His name is in the fence.
Yeah, it's like his signature embedded in the painting.
That's so cool.
And the moon is clearly like the focal point. It dominates the foreground, and these posts are like bracketing the fluid environment. And then the background, it transitions from soft blues at the top to warmer greens and yellows at the bottom.
So it's like a whole world contained within this painting, like a cosmic dreamscape.
Exactly. And what's your initial impression just based on that description?
I mean, it sounds really whimsical, like a child's drawing of the moon, but with this like sophisticated use of color and composition, it's got this dreamlike quality that's really intriguing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the analysis of full moon that we have suggests connections to all these different art movements.
Like what?
Well, the bold colors and the energetic lines, they're reminiscent of expressionism and Fauvism.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
And then the whole dream logic, the personified moon, that's definitely got some surrealist vibes.
Right, right.
But then there's also this like simplicity to the forms, a directness to the color that hints at folk art or naive art traditions.
Interesting. So it's like a melting pot of styles.
Yeah, and some people have even compared it to Chagall's personified moons and Klee's use of symbols and color blocks.
Okay, so he's clearly drawing on a lot of different sources, but it feels like he's synthesizing them into something unique.
Exactly. And ultimately, the painting seems to be investing the moon with this childlike, whimsical personality, while the fence acts as a kind of threshold or a stage.
Right, like it's presenting this inner lunar world to us.
Yeah, and so the question is, are these stylistic connections intentional on his part, or is it more like he's just reflecting broader artistic trends?
I mean, he was clearly aware of art history, so I don't think it's a coincidence.
Right.
But I also think he's going beyond just imitation. He's taking these elements and making them his own.
Yeah, it's not just a pastiche, it's something new.
Exactly.
Now, the YouTube transcript from Incomplete Works goes even deeper into the symbolism of full moon.
Okay, what do they say?
Well, they talk about this dynamic energy in the painting, like it's a cosmic theater with the moon as the star, and they see the moon as animated, anthropomorphic, displaying all these different emotions like childlike wonder, curiosity, amusement, even contemplation.
Wow, so they're really reading a lot into the moon's expression.
Yeah, and they see the columns, the fence posts, as both boundaries and conduits. Like they're framing this interplay of chaos and order, the ethereal and the grounded.
Right, so they're not just decorative, they have a symbolic function.
And the moon itself, they interpret it as a symbol of enlightenment, clarity, the awakened mind, and the swirling light around it represents the dynamic yet fundamentally still nature of reality.
Okay, so there's a lot going on there, a lot of layers of meaning.
And I think that's what's so cool about this painting. It invites these multiple interpretations.
Yeah, it's not a one-to-one thing, it's open to different readings.
And they go even further. They link the painting to the I Ching hexagram of peace, which represents harmony and balance. And they even bring in Lao Tzu's wisdom about the moon as a symbol of softness, yielding, and eternal essence.
Wow, so they're bringing in Eastern philosophy now.
Yeah, and I think it's really fitting because Camblin was known to be interested in Eastern thought, so it's not a stretch to think he might have been consciously incorporating these ideas.
Right, it adds another layer of depth to the work.
And they see the painting as a reflection of the human condition, our longing for transcendence balanced with our very real embodied existence, and the swirling light becomes a symbol of existential uncertainty.
That's pretty profound.
Yeah. They also talk about the moon's face as this invitation to curiosity and openness, like it's encouraging us to be mindful, to find clarity within chaos.
It's like a visual meditation.
Exactly. And that's what I love about this interpretation. It's not just about like decoding symbols. It's about how the painting makes you feel, how it makes you think about your place in the universe.
Yeah, it's about the experience of looking at it, not just the intellectual analysis.
Right. And they wrap things up by viewing the artwork as this playful yet profound exploration of creative energy, encouraging us to embrace our inner child and the wonder of creation, but always with those columns there to ground us, even in our wildest imaginations.
It's like a reminder that even in our dreams, even in our most imaginative flights of fancy, we're still connected to the real world.
Exactly, and they see it as a self-portrait of the universe, reflecting its own cosmic dance, our interconnectedness, and all the paradoxes of existence, like flux and stability, light and shadow, self and cosmos.
Wow, that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, and I think it really captures the essence of this painting, this seemingly simple image of a moon that's actually so much more than that.
It's like a microcosm of the universe.
And they leave us with this really nice image. They say it's an invitation to see the moon with the heart, to appreciate its beauty and impermanence, to let it guide our inner child, and to dance with those cosmic energies while staying grounded in truth.
That's a great takeaway, and I think it speaks to Camblin's overall approach to art, this blend of the playful and the profound, the intellectual and the emotional.
Yeah, and so we come to his later years, the 1980s onwards, and we see him continue to experiment. He develops this new style called Muchas Volantes with
Yeah.
Nancy Giordano, and this is where he's using dots and dashes to create optical illusions.
Oh, cool, like Escher or Dali.
Exactly. And
Uh,
again, he's involving the viewer in the meaning-making process. And then we have his later works, things like the Big Owl series and Another Descent from the Cross, which really showcase his mastery of technique and his ability to tell stories through symbols.
right, so he's still evolving, still pushing himself.
But there's also a shift in his life. Starting in 1976, he embraces a nomadic lifestyle. He's traveling all over, supporting himself through art sales and commissions.
Wow, so he's really living the artist's life, free from any constraints.
And he even starts signing his work as anonymous or anonymous artists, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to detach himself from the ego to let the work speak for itself.
Exactly. He's not interested in fame or recognition. It's all about the art.
And where did his travels take him?
Well, he eventually ends up in Oregon and then Louisiana with his wife Nancy. And during this time, he actually loses contact with his Houston friends for a while.
Oh, wow, so he kind of disappears for a bit.
Yeah, and then he briefly returns to Houston before his death, but attempts to organize a museum show for him here were unsuccessful.
That's unfortunate. It would have been great to see a retrospective of his work.
Yeah, but there was a small show at a frame shop after he had a stroke, mainly to raise funds for him.
Okay, so he kind of fell through the cracks a bit, despite his talent.
Yeah, and I think that adds to the mystery of Bob Camblin, this enigmatic figure who created all this incredible work, but never really sought the limelight.
It's like he was content to let the work speak for itself, and maybe that's why it continues to resonate with people today.
Yeah, there's something really powerful about that. Now, we also have these great quotes from people who knew him, like Pete Gershon. He called Camblin one of Boomtown Houston's most committed, talented, and enigmatic artists, a mystical trickster figure ripe for rediscovery.
I like that mystical trickster figure.
Yeah, and George Jackson Jr., he saw Camblin's art as a portal into truly experiencing art, and Camblin himself as a distillation of art, always striving for purity and expression.
That's beautiful. It really captures his essence as an artist.
And Earl Staley, his close friend and collaborator, he said Camblin taught him how to draw and compose, and he remembered him as this gregarious storyteller and a vital creative force in Houston.
So he was not just an artist, he was a mentor, a friend, a real presence in the community.
Yeah, and Benny Serling.